Welcome to the Awkward Conversations podcast. This week's episode is Dr. Jay McSlaughter. Dr. Jay McSlaughter, great name for a doctor, is a TikTok star who tells amazing, hilarious, and scary stories about his life as an ER doctor. Brilliant episode this week, some really interesting stories, super engaging to listen to. Like and subscribe and check him out on TikTok. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Happy to be here, man.
We're very, very excited to have you. Look, you cover a lot of topics, and you've got a really big following, and happened quite quickly. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? Maybe tell us for our UK listeners who you are, what it is you do, and kind of just a bit about yourself.
My name is Dr. J. Mack Slaughter. I'm an emergency doctor that grew up performing. I was on stage with my family at age 3, literally like singing and dancing around. My 2 older sisters sing and perform as well. My dad plays, writes songs, and sings. And so I grew up on stage, never thought that I was going to be a doctor, ended up touring in a pop band. It was very much a boy band and, like the early 2000s, and we toured with Destiny's Child, Beyonce's old band, and opened up for Bon Jovi, did some really big shows. And then I ended up doing some TV and film. I was on a Warner Brothers TV show for a year. And then I did a movie called Fat Albert, where, I'm kind of there a decent amount if you're really looking for me, but I don't say a lot. And then I decided to become a doctor. And I thought that I was just totally done with the world of entertainment. But man, it was just only a matter of time until I figured out how to integrate it into my life. And I've been able to do that in the last year through making videos on TikTok, Instagram, and most recently on YouTube.
Your life is bananas, like actually bananas. It's amazing. You mentioned before you had ADHD. I also have ADHD, so it's
oh yeah.
It's interesting. I always find anyone I meet with ADHD, they have great interests because they'll get hyper focused on one thing and really throw themselves into it, and they'll do something else. And it almost seems like your career being so varied is kind of almost a symptom of it.
Yes, it is. It's a living example of my ADHD. Like my years of like tangential careers is a symptom of it. It's a hilarious way to put it. You're so right. But it's a blessing and a curse. It depends on kind of who you talk to and how their ADHD really affects them. But when I'm passionate about something, I can hyper focus so hard on it that I am able to achieve so much in a very short amount of time that somebody without ADHD just doesn't understand. Like they just don't get it. And to me, it just makes sense because when I'm done hyper focusing on it, it's time to hyper focus on something else, which unfortunately sometimes can leave projects in the dust. But I think it's a blessing, man. I love my ADHD. And I also actually love that I didn't truly accept that I had it until the past couple of years, because I think I would have used it as an excuse at some point in my own brain. When I first decided to go back to school to become a doctor, my first couple of tests I did not do great on. And instead of being like, oh, it's my ADHD, I can't do this, I was like, how do I do this? How do I trick myself into being able to focus enough on this to be able to make great grades? And I worked around it and I worked with it and I made it. 11 years of training with somebody with very intense ADHD. I made it through 11 years. So if you have ADHD and you're watching this too, you can do it.
Yeah, that's incredible. Because it is with ADHD, like people, it can really seem like a mountain to climb when you start like a project or start a degree or start whatever, so it is amazing that you've been able to achieve that. I hope it's not too personal a question, and we can cut this bit out if it's not. Do you medicate at all, or do you manage it through kind of just like processes you have, strategies?
I manage it through processes. Again, because I didn't fully accept the fact that I had it until much later in life. I think I probably would have been medicated at one point, to be honest. But no, it's all been through processes. And I'm fortunate that I am very hyperactive predominant in my ADHD. I definitely have the attention deficit aspect of it, but it's not as debilitating, again, because if there's a lot of pressure on me, if I know it's very high stakes, I can focus. That
Yeah.
like kind of
Yeah.
unlocks my hyper focus. Or if I'm
Hmm.
very passionate about it, it unlocks my hyper focus as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Very. I'm exactly the same as
Hmm.
you there. Like without getting too much into the weeds with it, like, do you have any other kind of typical ADHD traits like restless leg syndrome or like sleep
Oh yeah.
problems or?
Yeah, I don't have any sleep issues, fortunately. Well, I say that. I mean, I'm an emergency doctor, so my hours are very, very weird. And so my circadian rhythms are like kind of my biological clock is all sorts of jacked up. So I kind of do now. I didn't before though. Restless leg big time. I cannot sit still. I just like anywhere I am, my leg is shaking and people like touch my leg like stop and I'm like I can't do that. Um, but one thing that was really awesome for me actually when I was in medical school that I think really helped me to get through and do well was that they recorded all my lectures. So instead of having to sit in a classroom, which is
Yeah.
the most excruciating experience of my life. I mean, it's like I'm getting slowly stabbed for like the entire lecture, just like, oh my God, this is horrible. Um, they recorded the lectures so I could stream them. And what I would do is I would stream them on 2x speed
Yep.
because 1x speed, I have no retention of what they talked about.
Yeah.
They're breathing, they're drinking things. I'm thinking about anything but what they're talking about. But in 2x speed, it's intense enough to where I like actually have to focus, to where if I'm trying to focus, they lose me regularly, which if something is losing me and I'm not losing it, it makes me kind of like key in. So being able to do that, I think really helped me.
It's amazing, and I think like it's almost like a blessing with the pandemic, that like
Mm,
and thankfully actually when I before I was doing a degree, master's in educational leadership, a couple of years ago, and it was like just before the pandemic started, and they were moving everything online, and it was the 2x speed like you said.
yeah.
It just changed everything. Everything clicked after
Hmm.
that.
Yep. Yeah. That
And
that that made my life so much easier. And I just figured out how to actively engage in the information.
yeah.
If I'm passively engaged in it, I'm done. I don't read. Honestly, I mean, I know
Hmm.
how to read, but I
Hmm.
can't read. I just can't focus on it. I don't retain unless I'm like really excited about the story or somehow it's like really grabbed me. I don't retain anything, but if I am doing note cards, so that was my hack is that in medical school, I made thousands of note cards, tens of thousands, probably to be honest. But forcing myself to make a question about that information that I had to memorize and then obviously make the answer on the other side. I use physical note cards. I know now a lot of people use like digital note cards and run them in their phone, and that's cool too. But forcing me to actively engage with that information by asking that question and then later on memorizing it. When I'm looking at it, I have a stimulus and I have to respond with the correct answer. Oh, it's wrong, I put it in the other pile. Oh, it's right, I put it in this pile. That's the way that I got through med school, was just rote memorization of absurd numbers of note cards. And then ultimately when I finally got past that, because that's honestly, it's good for memorizing details, but it's not good for seeing the overall picture and really understanding the material as a whole. But once I started training in the hospitals themselves, all of those individual details that I memorized started fusing together to give me this big overarching understanding of the human body and all the terrible things that can happen with it.
It's amazing, and like that's your TikTok is very entertaining,
Thanks, man.
slightly terrifying, and
I know.
yeah, like you do it in a very cheery way, and sometimes I'm like, oh my
Like,
god,
oh, that's
yeah,
really serious stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Um,
funny, man.
yeah, like you have a lot of pressure in your role, and it was interesting. You were talking about I'm going to get her name wrong. Is it Nurse Donda? Is it Nurse
Oh yeah, Redonda, right? Yeah,
Redonda, right? And
Redonda Vought. Sorry, Redonda Vought.
Redonda Vaught. Would you mind recapping that story for our listeners?
Oh my God, this is a terrifying one. So basically, there was a patient that was getting an MRI, I believe. And so MRIs take a very long time and they image the inside of someone's body. And so you have to lay there for a very, very long time. And this patient was like moving around, and I think they were a little what we call agitated. So they're just kind of having trouble staying still and following commands. And so they asked for a medicine to kind of help calm them. And so what they ended up calling out for was a medicine called Versed, or, there's like brand names like Kleenex. I don't know if you have that, or,
Yep.
kind of the generic name, which would be like a tissue. And so they asked for the brand name of it, which is Versed. The generic name would be midazolam. And they instead pulled a medicine called vecuronium, which is a paralyzing agent. So it takes all of your muscles and freezes them simultaneously. And this is so scary, but you can't move, speak, or breathe. And so you're paralyzed and you can't even call out for help. And that patient slowly died like that. And it's one of the nastiest, most terrifying medical errors that I've ever heard of in my life. And there were a lot of steps along the way that led to that. And there are a lot of people that just exclusively blame the nurse. But there are many systems errors there that should have protected that patient's life that failed. And that's what we should focus on, not just the individual that accidentally gave that medicine.
Um, Obviously, understandably, the family will want to, seek legal recourse, try and
Mm-hmm.
sue and get some sort of compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there should be greater protections for medical professionals who do make genuine mistakes that is out of character, and they don't have a record of a track record
Right.
of mistakes? Do you think there could be something that should be brought in, or do you
The
think it's
really gnarly thing about this particular case is that they did charge her with homicide. Now, it's not to the same as like, first degree or something like that. I believe it came out as negligent homicide. I'd have to look over the case again. But there are certain protections that are in place, and it varies state by state and what role you're in. So, for instance, in Texas, we have a lot of protections, for us medical legally, because for a long time we were just getting our pantsuit off of us, and people were paying, 60, 80 plus $1,000 every single year just for what's called malpractice insurance to cover us in case we got sued. And so now my malpractice insurance is much lower. It's $12,000 a year. It's still not cheap, but it's $12,000 a year. And it's, I'm doctors are already just like riddled with debt, and there are a lot of other issues with the U.S. healthcare system. And so it's nice to have those protections in place, but not all states are the same. And not all kind of fields of medicine have those same levels of protection. So the fact that they charged her with such a serious charge is very, very scary to everyone in healthcare. And we're all really watching our backs right now after that.
it's frightening. Frightening, I imagine, as a professional seeing that, because like I'm sure, like obviously, she made a mistake, but I'm sure that can happen to
Right.
anyone, especially if
It
you're on
can.
night shifts and whatever. You're sleep deprived.
Right. Right.
Like,
And what
is
do you
it?
do? Just like not have night shifts? Okay, let's just have hospitals open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then everybody's going to die from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m. You know what
Just
I mean?
cross your fingers that nothing happens. During.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy though, but before emergency departments, and I heard about this actually when I was in my training, they told me about some developing country. I think it was I don't even want to say which one, but somewhere in Africa, and they would find bodies in front of the hospital in the morning because they got into an accident. They went to the hospital and they didn't have ERs that were open 24/7, and people would show up and wait for it to open, and they would die before the hospital opened up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But
clearly our societies need this. And then, but like you said, when you're sleep deprived, it's 3 a.m. People are imperfect, much more imperfect than they are during waking hours. And so there need to be certain protections in place because we are all humans after all.
yeah, I listened to a podcast about sleep deprivation, and particularly in the Navy. It's pretty endemic,
Mm,
the US Navy.
mm.
And there was the SS John McCain. It crashed into another boat in the US Navy, and I can't remember which
Oh,
one, but it was a
wow.
very big one. And it turned out that those crashes are not always publicized, and they're actually very common in the Navy
Oh
because
my
people
gosh.
people are literally just they're getting by on 3 hours sleep. And it was kind of
Mm.
cultural within the Navy that um, you get by on no sleep, and it's
Yeah,
almost like
you
a
just
badge
you
of
don't
honor, you know.
complain. Yeah, you don't mention it. Yeah, we
Like
had
you
stuff
know,
like
I,
that
I
in the
worked
US too.
18 hours there, and I only had 3 hours sleep the night before, you know. It's that kind of, you know,
Oh,
I'm you know, I'm made of tough stuff, and it's like, well, no,
yeah.
like you need sleep like the rest of us. And
People's lives are in your hands. Yeah, I'm actually very grateful to the studies that have been done with pilots and sleep deprivation and their ability to execute in a safe manner very complex tasks because you know one medical professional harms one patient and that's one thing, but one pilot makes an error, then 300 people can die, right? And so all of a sudden, like the government's eyebrows raise and they're like, we got to stop this from happening, right? And so fortunately, there's been a lot of research into kind of the cognitive or the kind of like the mental effects of that in a negative way. And they're vast. They're very, very significant. The you know with only X number of hours of sleep, you operate, complex tasks like a drunk person.
yeah.
And it makes sense because
Mm-hmm.
when you've been really sleep deprived, you feel that. But pride is a very kind of strong emotion in people's brains. And so they'll pretend like they can handle very complicated tasks and they can't. And it's evidenced by these crashes that you're talking about and these medical errors that you see. And
Well,
obviously, that's something that we need to swallow.
what's the culture there in terms of like if you're sick, you can like can you take a sick day guilt free, or is there an element of pressure where it's like, oh shit, I
There's
have to.
pressure. There's pressure. There's pressure for sure. Especially during COVID, man. Especially during COVID, everybody's burnt out. Everybody's getting COVID. They're decreasing the guidelines to, oh, as long as you're feeling like slightly better and 5 days have gone by, just go ahead and go to work. And brain fog is a real thing. And there's absolutely, as much as we'd like to say that doesn't kind of hinder our performance in the hospitals. It absolutely can, and pride is very much present in the hospital systems as well.
Okay, I suppose it's present everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it takes a few brave people to stand up and go, actually the system's not serving us particularly
right,
well. Maybe we need to look into it.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
I've loads of stuff I want to ask you, but I am curious of your thoughts on the healthcare system, because obviously, I've seen
Hmm.
the Michael Moore documentary Sicko, which was very
Oh
interesting, and
yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Oh my
TikTokers
gosh.
talking about going in with like a broken leg or something and coming out with a phenomenal bill.
Thousands
Um,
of dollars.
yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating for me because the people that are at the bedside are there for the right reasons. I mean, there are a select few, obviously, nothing's 100%, but almost everybody that's there at the bedside is there because we want to help people, because we want to connect with people, not because we want to get as much money from them as physically possible. And the pay, that level of pay that comes out of a patient's pocket does not go directly into the doctors and nurses' pockets that are on at the bedside. That's the rest of the healthcare system. Now, that's the insurance company. Those are the hospitals. I can't talk about the hospitals too much because they employ me, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the middlemen. There are just an absurd number of middlemen that have kind of elbowed their way in. That's big pharma. That's the pharmacies. There are just so many companies that are scooping off profit, scooping, 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 scooping. And ultimately, for each one of those people to maximize their profits, they just keep upping the amount that has to get paid. And even if it does ultimately come out of the insurance's pockets, insurance is always going to make a profit
Yeah.
So how do they do that? They charge more money to the people. So it's like just the patients and the US population lose every time. They just have no control. They have no control. The companies have all the control, and it's so disheartening, especially for somebody who, you know, like everyone in medicine, came in with just a really big heart and came in for all the right reasons. And I have no control over it. I'm a doctor. I went to training for 11 years and I have no control over the system. I'm just like this tiny little cog in this huge, complicated machinery of profit.
You need to
And
run.
it's terribly
Like
disheartening.
you need to run, I think. I think that will run for you know, Congress or yeah, and try and make a difference and stand as someone who's in a position of authority that you are, an ER doctor, and can say, look, this isn't like a
Don't
viable
make me
option.
hyper focus on that. You know what happens when I hyper focus? I can't stop. Don't make me
Yeah.
hyper focus on that. At some point, it's all going to come to a head because it's already unsustainable. It's already unsustainable. It's not even sustainable for me. I make a good living. You know, I'm not bragging, but I make a good living. And my insurance is killing me. How much I have to pay every single month is killing me. And it's only going to get worse because my kids are going to get older and my kids are going to start, you know, collecting medical conditions and, you know, different prescriptions and stuff like that. And for somebody that's like kind of upper middle class to be hurting as much as I am, I'm like, what about the rest of America? You know, how are they doing this? And so many companies are kind of skirting the issue because, you know, one of the ways historically that insurance has gotten so much money from the public is by making companies provide insurance to their employees, right? So companies have to provide certain insurance options for their employees, and then they can charge more because these other companies have all this money. But now the companies have figured out how to get away from that and then start keeping everybody, you know, essentially doing tasks for them, but as independent contractors. So they're not employees. So now they're not responsible for their insurance. But now those poor people do not get lumped in with a big risk pool. And then they're by themselves trying to get insurance. And when you're by yourself trying to get insurance, then your premiums are much higher. And it's just killing the US population. It's so sad. And again, I'm just so helpless, man. I'm just so helpless. Yeah, you're going to be fired up, man. Yeah. I am going to have to run for but at some point, it's going to keep bubbling is kind of what I'm saying. It's already at a point of no return. At some point, it's going to bubble, and it's going to reach a boiling point, and the U.S. population isn't going to stand for it anymore. And maybe I will, man. Maybe I will turn that into my next passion project.
Like it's really interesting being an outside observer, you know, that this myth that's being peddled of like socialized medicine is like an evil, and that, you know, privatized healthcare is this really, you know, sought after and viable option, when the realities just don't match those statements.
Right.
You know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the UK healthcare system. Have you have any experience with it? But yeah, like I remember I was sick. I was sick like maybe 3 years ago. I got this crazy like strep throat infection, and I didn't realize it, like something like as simple as a sore throat could knock you on your ass as much. But I was yeah, in a really bad way. And then the infection from my throat spread into my gums. It was agony, absolute agony. And like I went to the hospital. They gave me all sorts of different antibiotics for the strep, antibiotics for the mouth, all sorts of different scans and checks and bloods and all the rest of it. And I left, and obviously didn't pay anything because it's all covered here. But it was just so beautiful. I felt incredibly lucky. And afterwards, when it was better, it was like a real moment of like, and I told a couple of people, I was like, isn't it amazing that we have this where you can get sick, you get looked after. Money was not it wasn't a thought.
You are what matters. Yeah. You are what matters. The dollar amount does not matter. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I wish that's how we had it, honestly.
It's not perfect here, and you know the wait times for like electives are phenomenal, so a lot of people will pay for those privately. But Yeah, no, and they're the conservative government here are what they do is they try and privatize. We're not privatizing the NHS. We're only privatizing this small section of it because it's not working. Oh no, we're not doing the
Mm.
whole thing. We're just going to do this small section over here. So it's kind of, death by a thousand cuts kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's definitely something we need to be really careful of.
So you're saying right now, kind of the private sector is trying to take over more and more and more of the NHS. So there's
Yeah,
like that's the battlefront right now. Interesting. Yeah, it's
and
good. It's good to have reminders of how good you guys have it.
we call it our NHS, and like very rarely people will say the NHS. Everyone says our
Oh,
NHS, and
our NHS. Oh, that's
I
beautiful.
like the way that it's referred to as that because I think that reminds everyone that it is
Yeah.
made up of regular people, and our taxes are slightly higher than yours, but when you factor in what you pay every month for healthcare, our
Oh
taxes are actually
no.
lower.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you guys probably end up paying less because, and this is in US dollars, not pounds, but I mean, I pay like $1,800 every single month. So almost $2,000 every single month. You
Yeah,
multiply that by 12 and geez, man, like that is someone's salary. That's somebody's yearly salary. So like, how is that person going to get insurance? You
yeah.
know, it doesn't make sense.
That's it's phenomenal money. It's absolutely phenomenal money, and then
Yeah.
you've got all the deductibles on top of that, isn't that right? Isn't there stuff that
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's just what I pay to like have crappy insurance. And then anytime you have to use it, you're still paying too. And then you're adding it all up and you're like, what am I paying for? You're basically paying for the rare event where you have to pay $1 million to the hospital system and nobody can do that. And so we're all kind of covering ourselves for catastrophic events, really, is like the main reason that people have insurance in the US. But a lot of people, because they can't afford it, they just don't have insurance and they're gambling. And one day they could really, really lose that gamble in a terrible way because you're not just going to not get treatment, right?
yeah.
You have to. If you're dying, you're going to go to the hospital. You'll have no control over that situation. You end up with maybe surgeries, maybe an ICU admission, something like that. You walk away with, $100,000, $200,000 in bills, and who has the money to pay that? And then you're in debt for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And it's just that
it,
it breaks my heart.
that's mega money, like mega money, and it's like um, we're all going to get sick. It's a guaranteed. We're
It's
all
a
going to get
guarantee.
sick. So
Yes.
surely, as we all need education, we all need roads. Surely that should be factored into part of the.
I love it when people in the US are like socialism sucks, and then people are like, what about the police department, what about the firemen, you know what I mean? It's like, well, okay, yeah, that's socialized. And then like you said, roads, that's socialism, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so there's always a certain percentage breakdown, and unchecked capitalism has been shown to be a potentially greedy, evil thing. And so there needs to be a balance. We need to strike a balance. And that's interesting that you said that the balance is being fought right now within the healthcare system. And that's perhaps why one of my videos is doing pretty well on YouTube. I'm very new to YouTube. I probably only have 10 videos, something like that, out on YouTube right now. But the one that's doing great, the one that has like over 200,000 views, is about, US versus UK prices, and kind of comparing the two. And then I just go off on this like emotional rant about how frustrated I am with the system. And I think people in the UK see that. And it, like you said, it kind of puts things in perspective for a minute that, wait a minute, we actually do have something really wonderful and special here. And it could be so much worse.
yeah. It's interesting that prices of certain medications are so astronomical that and it all depends on what company buys over the rights to that medication, and
Yeah.
then
Hmm.
yeah. Now, who was that guy? Who was that? What was his name? The pharma bro. What was his name? Skrelly. And what did he buy over? Was it the EpiPens he bought
Yeah.
over? And he ended
Yeah.
up jacking up the price to some like it was
It's like
like
it's
it
it's
wasn't
one
10%.
thing.
It was like many multiples
Oh yeah, I
of
think it was
the
like thousands of percent. It's something ridiculous, but it's one thing if you're doing that with a medicine that like gives you bigger boobs or something, you know what I
yeah,
mean? But that
yeah,
was a life-saving medicine. You're playing with people's very ability to breathe. Literally, when you have an anaphylactic reaction, when you have an allergic reaction, your throat swells up and you are unable to get oxygen into your lungs and exhale carbon dioxide. And it can be minutes before you pass out and slowly and steadily die. And the medicine to reverse that was in the thousands to purchase. I think it's better now, but it was in the thousands to be able to purchase. And it is not an expensive treatment. The medicine itself is like one of the oldest drugs that we've had available. And it's just a great example of how unchecked capitalism can cause some serious issues, and a great reminder why you guys have the system that you have.
We are lucky, you know. I've chatted to a few of my American friends that like they can't believe you know, like the kind of the holiday entitlements, sick pay, you know, that kind of thing we get here. It is interesting. It was holiday entitlements wouldn't be the same, and sick pay wouldn't be the same, you know. So no, we are very, very grateful in that sense. But you know, the whole world looks to you guys for leadership in probably nearly every area. So you must be doing.
And we're just
right.
blowing it in this one, right? We're just blowing it.
I have to ask about the opioid epidemic, because I recently watched Dope Sick. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
It's great. Yeah, really good with I forgot his name now. Batman, Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton.
Yeah, he's like, I think he's like in his twilight age of acting now. Like he's just everything he does now, he's just incredible. He's so good.
He's so good. Did you see Birdman?
It's incredible. Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, man.
Excellent.
He's
I watched that. I was like, Michael Keaton is back.
yeah. And like the founder, about the two founders of McDonald's, and
I haven't seen that yet. I need to watch that though.
It's incredible. But yeah, he's phenomenal in it. But he's in Dope Sick, and like I don't know if the portrayal's as accurate as it is, but the kind of the way the medicines were advertised for use, for safe use, and how they got special treatment by the FDA was very, very interesting.
Very eye-opening.
Yeah. How do you guys obviously, I think things have probably changed a lot since then, because that was,
yes,
I think they maybe changed the law around that. How does that work for you guys?
Well, really, it's just awareness now. Now the awareness is very, very high of the dangers, the addiction, and obviously the overdoses, which are kind of ungodly, really. Now the pendulum has swung. We've done a much better job of avoiding excessive opioid prescriptions. But now it's kind of instead of taking each case very individually and kind of weighing the pros and cons of certain opioid prescriptions, the pendulum has swung so far away from prescribing opioids that there's certain conditions and situations that people find themselves in that are very, very deserving of opioids and adequate pain control, where providers are much more hesitant to prescribe. And so now the pendulum's all the way on the other side. Somebody has terribly fractured bones in their body, and the prescriber hesitates to give them a very short-term supply of opioids. And because we were under the microscope for a long time, and we continue to be, and also there have been things that have been put in place basically to make it real annoying for us to be able to prescribe opioids. I mean, it used to be, you kind of like just tap it into the computer, press enter, prints off a piece of paper, you sign it, and it's there. And now we have to go through this whole like electronic process. And it doesn't always work, and you send it to the wrong pharmacy, and you got to change the pharmacy and this and that. And so I think I think maybe it was put in place so everything was much more easy to track from kind of a bird's eye view, but has made it a huge headache for providers. And so again, the benefit is that people who are abusing opioids are getting much less of them, and hopefully, being forced into changing their lifestyle there. But then the detriment is that the people who truly need them for very serious, painful conditions do not get them in many cases.
Yeah, it's interesting how like that line seems like a very thin line you guys have
It
to walk
is.
to get it
It
right,
is.
like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in terms of the pressures of the job, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you've probably heard of this great resignation post pandemic, that, you know, everyone's just
Mm-hmm.
quitting their jobs because they've just realized, actually, this isn't working for me, this kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Have you seen much of that in the hospitals, of people quitting?
So much. It was crazy. A lot of it, a lot of it was the second wave, was Delta. We made it through the first round. It was extremely traumatic for us, for all of us, whether you're in, environmental services and you're cleaning the rooms in between patients, whether you're the nurse, whether you're the respiratory therapist, whether you're the police force in the hospital, whether you're the doctor. It was traumatic for all of us. But we got through it. And then we saw those numbers drop. We all felt so much better. We're like, okay, we did it. Yay, high fives, high fives, high five. Delta came. So many people were like, no, not doing that again. Bye. Most of them nurses, because nurses have a lot more options. So instead of working in the emergency department where you're just getting killed, why not work for elective surgical procedures that
Yeah.
get canceled during like big spikes? They're like, I'm just going to go over here and get paid to like not do a lot. And man, that killed us on the front line, because I trained for 11 years to be an emergency doctor, and I would see patients in the waiting room because we didn't have enough nurses to staff the rooms for them to be able to come back and get an IV and get their medicines. I would recognize the fact that they had a very serious condition, that they very, very immediately needed antibiotics and fluids, or they needed CAT scans, or, they needed for us to check levels for their heart because they might be having a heart attack. But I am one piece of the puzzle. I'm one cog in the machine. And if those other cogs aren't present, that patient doesn't get care. And so I'd go into the waiting room, I'd see all my patients there. And then the people that were just hurting so much would look at me with this pain in their eyes and this need, and like they're basically like begging me to help them. And I couldn't help them. All my training, 11 years of training, and 5, 6, 7 years of experience. I don't remember how long I've been out of training now. I think 6 years, something like that. But I couldn't help him. I could only do so much, and that just killed me, man. That just hurt my heart so much, because I came in there just like ready to go to war every single day. And I'm just like, when you're one soldier out on the battlefield, you're not going to win the war. You're not going to win the battle. That's for sure.
That sounds horrendous and very
It
emotionally
was.
draining.
It was.
Yeah, like the pandemic has kind of exposed a lot of things, like who are the essential workers,
Mm-hmm.
who are the important ones that we actually need, and who are the ones that,
Yeah.
maybe a bit more disposable. And like, it is interesting. It has revealed a lot. Like, in terms of COVID and stuff, I'm sure you have, because I've heard just so many stories from doctors. But out of curiosity, just out of probably a morbid curiosity, it's like, have you seen patients who, deliberately not got the vaccine or whatever,
Oh
and
yeah.
they've obviously, they're in to see you, so they're not in good shape.
Yeah, no, a ridiculous amount, especially with Delta, because for the first variant, they didn't really have time to get it and get protected. But Delta, a lot of people had the time to make their choice, and they chose how they chose. And when they'd come in, and I saw the fear in their eyes and the possibility of death staring them down, they looked at me and they were like, "Can I get the vaccine now?" And I told them, "No, it's too late." You know,
Out of curiosity, what would happen if you give them the vaccine? Does it just would be ineffective? Is that the idea, or?
Yeah, essentially they were getting the vaccine at that moment, right? They were getting exposed to the virus at that moment. So all it would do was potentially be to create a stronger immune response to the virus and the vaccine kind of simultaneously. So it would feed on themselves. So it wouldn't lead to very good things. That it kind of,
Right.
when the immune system goes into overdrive, it can be very bad. You end up killing yourself in certain ways. Your body trying to fight off an infection so intensely, it's almost like a nuke. It's like your body is setting off the nukes,
Is
and
it,
you'll get the infection, but you'll kill yourself too. You know,
is that what they call the cytokine storm? Is that I'm
cytokine
probably,
storm, exactly.
probably...
Look at you, bro. Yes, cytokine storm, exactly.
I know, it's like, anyone, and their dog suddenly becomes an expert in COVID when it comes out, because everyone's a bit scared and you read everything you can read on it and
Yes,
all that.
yes.
So, what is it? Steroids seems to there's the
Yes,
steroids that helps
absolutely.
with that.
Yeah, steroids given kind of at the right time can improve your chance of surviving. And so that was one of the only mainstays of treatment that we had very early along, as we gave low dose dexamethasone, to people that were being hospitalized, though, people that were truly sick. Because if you kind of gave it too early, you jumped the gun, and then later on when they needed it, it wasn't as effective. So you kind of would withhold treatment until it was time. And that frustrated a lot of people because they wanted treatment kind of regardless. They were like, give me something, and you're like, actually nothing is what's better for you long term. And it's hard for people to understand that sometimes not getting treatment is better for them than getting treatment, because it's like, problem, solution, give me solutions. You're like, the solution is nothing right now. The solution is survive and monitor yourself.
And have you had COVID yourself?
I have, yeah. Earlier this year, I got it. Fortunately, it was Omicron, and it didn't hit me very hard. I had about 24 hours of extreme fatigue. I remember, because I'm a very energetic person, and I remember being at work. I had my N95 on and stuff like that, and I was like, this is kind of early on in my shift to feel a little tired. And then, but I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have any other symptoms. I wasn't coughing, runny nose, anything. I came home, and I looked in the mirror, and my muscles just started fasciculating. That is, they're like contracting, rapidly. The chills, shivers, I guess is the right name for it. So I was getting the shivers, and I was like, uh-oh. And then and then I got real warm, and I just like laid in the shower for like 30 minutes, which is not like me. And just like the water's hitting me, and I'm like, I have it. I just knew that I had it. And then I had a swab at the house, and I tested myself, and it was like the second that I put it in that reagent, it was like, bing, super positive. And I was like, oh no. But fortunately for me, it was just like 24 hours of extreme fatigue. I basically would like walk around my house and be like, I'm going to go make some food. And I just like fall asleep on the couch, and then I'd get up and like, whoa, that was crazy. I'd go back to my room. I'm going to wash my face and just like be asleep on the floor. It was kind of crazy. 24 hours later though, it was like 11 PM, after it set on at 11 PM the night before. And I was like, all right, time to play video games with my bros. And so I jumped online and had some wine and played with my friends, and that was it for me. I just had to quarantine after that.
Oh wow, that's an impressively mild response.
It was.
Response to it. Did anyone in your
But I
household
was
get it?
vaccinated and boosted, so
Yeah. Did anyone in your household get it apart from you?
No.
That's
I
yeah.
I kind of assumed that they did. We tested along the way,
Yeah.
but we all quarantined. So
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. What did you make of Joe Rogan's? Well, I wouldn't say it's like one response to COVID, but his varying responses and how he obviously they've changed a bit over time. But
yeah, he's really frustrating. I personally like him a lot, and I like his style. I love that he's open-minded, and I love that he just allows people to kind of flesh out their ideas. And I love the long format because, ultimately, what he preaches is right. That like condensing extremely complicated ideas into 10-second sound bites is not a good way for people to kind of form opinions, based on those 10-second sound bites. So I love that he truly kind of fleshes out ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, I think one of the issues is that, he does such a good job, and this is why he's so famous. That's why he is so listened, because he will have the most controversial people ever on his podcasts, and people that are very much on the fringe, and people that very much may be onto some very true, real ideas and concepts that are not mainstream. And I love that about him. But because of the nature of his show, he doesn't also have on people that represent the mainstream ideas as well. And so if you only listen to the fringe ideas, then you're going to only form your opinions on those fringe ideas, you know, and you don't trust the mainstream media because nobody trusts the mainstream media. And so you're only basing your opinions on the fringe stuff. And that's where he frustrates me a little. But he kind of acknowledged that just recently after all these people are kind of banning him and everything. He's like, maybe I should have the contrary opinions also on my podcast when I have one of these super fringy people on. But again, the problem is that that's not as exciting. You know,
100%.
it's like blaming YouTube for its algorithm or TikTok for its algorithm that focuses on the shock value stuff that gets people's attention. It's not the platform, it's what people focus on. It's our brains. It's our brain stems, you know, like the like, oh, it's a secret, I want in on it. That's exciting to us. Oh, everybody thinks this, but the truth is this. That's exciting to us. And so that's what we gravitate towards. And that's why he's so big. And that's why we're all frustrated with him. So take his fringy thing away from him, and less people are going to watch it. More people are going to watch whoever is the fringiest. So, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't win.
Yeah. You're 100% like it's what he's incentivized to do, and like that's the same. Like, yes. I don't really blame the politicians when they go down their bullshit culture war of like, you know, the don't say gay bill. Like what a waste of time that bill was to come in.
Yes.
You know, what an absolute waste of time. But it's like, you know, if I creating a whole storm over this, you're not really paying attention to all the other stuff that I'm not doing, which could be helping you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a thing that really resonates with people because it's very emotive and people get caught up in it, and it's like, yeah.
That's what gets them the attention. That's what gets them. They get positively reinforced for being absolutely crazy. The more ridiculous you are, the more reinforced you are for it, and the more likely you are to do more crazy things that don't make sense to the average person. But that gets their attention.
Yep. Like I like Joe Rogan. I think he for all the reasons you've said, I agree. Yeah. Like, I think he's a brilliant interviewer. He's got this very relaxed style. He lets people just be themselves, and I think he gets really good. He gets the best out of people. And I think that's why he is the best and the most listened to. Right. But he did go down a rabbit hole with, you know, the whole COVID and
big time.
Masks aren't effective, when it's like, well, actually, you know, the studies say they are, but he's picking like some couple of, you know, spurious studies that aren't peer reviewed that, you know, that say, you know, they mightn't be as effective or whatever. And then it's the, you know, highlighting the risks of the vaccine. Definitely not a bad thing to do.
He picked a side. That was the thing that was different about everything with COVID, is he picked a side. Instead of really kind of staying open-minded about it, he really picked a side and really preached that side. And like you said, there is good evidence for certain types of masks. You know, those cloth masks, maybe not as much, but surgical masks and N95s, absolutely there's evidence to back up the protective nature of it. And like you said, the vaccines, like cherry picking adverse effects that may or may not have been from the vaccine itself, potentially cost a lot of people their lives, their livelihood, and terrible long COVID symptoms, you know?
100%. And that was the thing, you know, he obsessed of myocarditis in young boys, the study. And then it turned out the study was actually pretty poorly constructed, and that the risk of getting myocarditis through infection
with COVID is way higher. Yeah. Way higher. So yeah, I mean, you in medicine in general, you have to take the bird's eye view, and you have to look at the studies with thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to base your opinions on. You can't just look at one part. But the thing that people connect to emotionally are the stories.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of like inherent mental bias that we all have, including scientists. Like, the hardcore scientists are constantly trying to force themselves to look at the numbers and look at the big studies, because they're emotional too. They see the one, you know, like 10-year-old that had a really bad go at myocarditis, and they want to be like, that's the reason I should not vaccinate my child. But then you look at the numbers, when you look at the big studies, Well, no, not taking the vaccine and getting COVID is going to put them at much higher risk for it, which it's almost a certainty now that everybody's going to get COVID, right?
Mhm.
Unless you just have no friends and work virtually all the time, which nobody wants to do, man. Like that epidemic
Yeah.
of mental health issues, the pandemic of mental health issues coincided directly with COVID and isolation and
Like lockdowns, they're really, really
oof.
important and they saved so many people's lives. It
Mm-hmm.
came at a cost, like it really did.
Came at a cost. Came at a
Yeah.
cost.
I was,
What
and they,
my best friend's little brother. It
right.
killed him. It killed him, honestly. He was drinking and like doing pills and stuff, passing the time, and it killed him.
It's terrible. And it shows you that people you maybe wouldn't necessarily associate as being vulnerable. They it kind of, the pandemic has kind of exposed that as being
It
actually,
has.
some people aren't as really as robust as you think. And they've been probably working through
Right.
some stuff for a few years, but
Right.
maybe didn't know about it.
My grandfather always said something to me when I was younger, because my mom would be like, tell J Mac the war stories, and he'd tell me cool stories about when he was in World War II. And he was an intelligence, he's a real
Oh,
smart
wow.
guy, MIT graduate, organic chemist, all this stuff. But he told me that you don't truly know someone until you've been at war with them. And COVID kind of brought a little bit of that out in people, and in Texas, I don't know if you heard about this, but like during COVID, we also had some like huge power outages,
Oh, yeah.
kind of throughout the state, and issues with freezes and water and everything like that. And so all of a sudden, people don't have power, and don't have running water, and you started to see who people truly were in those situations. And I understand that just a little bit more. And like you said, certain people just maybe aren't as resilient as you thought they were.
Yeah. Some people can carry a bit of a bravado or a bit of personality that kind of masks the fact that they're maybe a bit vulnerable, and then every day
Yes.
isn't as easy as what it seems for them.
Right.
And that's it's funny. My boss who I used to work for, I'm not saying who she is, but she always used to say, like, be kind to people because you never know what they're going through. But it's like she was an
Oh.
absolute tyrant. She was terrifying to work for. But
You're like,
then,
how am I kind to you? I cannot be kind to
yeah.
you.
Oh, she
But
was
maybe she
hilarious.
was
Like,
going through some serious stuff.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things people can kind of hide that from people, and yeah, it always comes out in some way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm very conscious of taking up an hour of your time here. So the I guess the one last thing I was genuinely quite curious to touch on with
Mm-hmm.
you was uh, traumatic brain injury.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's obviously come up again, and obviously to the forefront when Will Smith, maybe I shouldn't mention his name, but a certain very famous actor.
What you really
He
shouldn't mention is G.I. Jane 2.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I
or
just get
her.
slapped in the face by Will Smith here.
I know they asked Ricky Gervais, is like, he did the Golden Globes and he's obviously very controversial, whatever. And they asked Ricky Gervais, what did you think of the comment? And he's like, oh, well, I wouldn't have made the joke about it, G.I. Jane 2. I would have made the joke about her boyfriend. And I just thought it was a very, very good,
Uh,
right.
but he might not have gotten slapped if he made that joke.
But you know
It
that
was,
thing?
but yeah, it was going for something that she was already very insecure about,
Yeah,
that I don't think Chris Rock necessarily knew that she was really insecure
yeah.
about.
The
But
only
traumatic
thing,
brain injury is very, I mean, it's a very interesting topic, and it's still very poorly understood, honestly. But the more that we learn about chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as CTE, which is where you get repetitive trauma to the brain and end up with a whole host of issues later on, including emotional lability, that is, not being able to control your emotions, violence, depression, and suicide is it's heartbreaking to see, and it's also difficult to watch, knowing that what caused the chronic traumatic encephalopathy has the damage is already done. The damage has already been done in so many individuals throughout, specifically what I think of is American football, because they were taught for years to lead with their heads when they tackle, when they block, get your head in there, crash heads. And it's not only the real big hits that knock you out, it's those just repetitive head traumas. Even soccer players, that heading the ball over and over and over and over and over throughout a career can absolutely lead to symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And though it's not as severe maybe as people who were boxers, MMA, football, American football, it's very real, and it's very, very hard to watch progress.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the documentary there about Aaron Hernandez, the American football player. It's one of the few documentaries I'm like, did this happen? And I'm getting out my phone. I'm like, it did happen.
Like, is this real? What?
Yeah. It's one of those ones that it just gets more shocking as the time goes on. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary, what's it called? Icarus, on Netflix. It's about blood.
Man, you just need to give me a list. You need to be like, man. Dr. J Mack, here is a list of movies that you need to watch, because you're naming some really good ones right now, and I have not seen them.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones, like there's a few documentaries that are like, it's one that you think, I can't believe that happened. So Icarus is one. There's one, and I can't remember. I think it's called Cocaine Cowboys. I think that's what it's called on Netflix as well. It's one of those ones where they're all true, obviously, because they're documentaries, and they're just incredible. So there's a few ones for you to check out.
Cool, man. I look forward to it. You're gonna have to email me that though, because I'm not gonna remember all those names.
yeah. Set you on the spot there. Look, thank you so much for your time. You're the man to listen to. You're so interesting. So
thank you, brother.
So interested. That was why I messaged you on TikTok, just to see if you could be able to talk to us. But yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome, brother. This was really fun, and I love that I get to talk to a UK audience as well, because again, I respect what you guys have been able to do with your healthcare system, and I very much look up to it. And so anytime I can get a little bit more insight on it, I want that.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And I look forward to hearing when you run for senator, when you run for Congress.
One of these days, maybe.
All right. Well, look, the podcast should be ready in about 3 to 4 weeks.
Cool.
We've got a couple in the can. We're going to release those out in the coming weeks, and then
great.
I'll give you a shout anyway if you wouldn't mind tagging us or whatever in your socials.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Any other guests that I might know?
A girl called the Black Menaces. They're TikTokers from Utah.
Oh, cool.
They are Black rights activists, and they walk around their campus of Brigham Young University and ask them questions about, like, what do you think of, do you support Black Lives Matter? Very simple questions. And the social dynamic of just asking random people random questions is phenomenal. So they were great to talk to. Really good.
Put a lot of people on the spot, like,
yeah. And Nate Petrowski, he's moved to West Virginia. He is a a homesteader in West Virginia. And
cool.
Totally cool. You should check him out. And we a Canadian girl called Christina Umares, who she started up like a print on demand business through Etsy.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Making like a ton of money and quit her
job.
It.
And, nice.
I love talking to interesting people. It's great.
Very cool, man. Well, I look forward to. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I look forward to checking out their episodes as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, look, thank you so much. Hopefully, do you much on for the rest of your day?
Yeah, I don't work until 8 p.m. We have like a couple little meetings before them, but just hanging out with the fam besides that.
Yeah. So, what out of curiosity, I have to ask, what if your family and friends make of like your kind of your TikTok fame? But I suppose because you have the boy band background and you've done some TV and film and stuff that it's probably not maybe as enthralling as perhaps like a random Joe, but
it
it's
did
already
make a lot of sense to them. When it came around, they were like, oh, this makes so much sense. Of course you were going to do this. You know, I never really planned on doing it. When I left entertainment, I was done with it. I was just done with it completely. I was never going back. A couple people were like, that's genius. Go into medicine and then come back to entertainment. I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm done with entertainment. I'm never going back. And but then the pandemic hit, and one of my buddies who actually has a social media management company was like, you could do this. And I was like, nah, TikTok is for children. And he was like, no, like you could be a voice for, the most current information on COVID. You could, share your cool stories from the ER. And I was like, maybe. And I gave it a try, and I got a lot of positive reinforcement from viewers. And I was like, okay, I'll just kind of keep going with this. And then now it's just so integrated into my life. I just love it, man. I feel whole, honestly. It's like something that I was just very passionate about, and something that I invested a lot of time in, performing, that is, earlier in my life. And to be able to kind of utilize some of that experience these days in front of a camera, I feel whole again. It's wonderful.
That's incredible. It draws me parallels to Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian prime minister. He was an entertainer before becoming prime minister, and he's just such an engaging person to listen to, because that's what entertainers are. They're very engaging, and you are very engaging. So,
oh, thank you, brother.
The fact that you can couple your entertainer skills with your experience as being a doctor is amazing.
Well, shoot, I am deeply honored that you would even mention that guy's name in the same sentence with mine. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Anyway, I look forward to keeping up with your TikToks. And for our guests here, check out Dr. J Mack on Twitter. I'll tag you in the post.
Oh, not Twitter. I'm not on Twitter.
Or sorry, Twitter. TikTok.
Yeah. TikTok, Instagram, and then now YouTube as well. And I plan on doing more cool things, kind of comparing UK and US healthcare systems.
Oh, awesome. I know. And look, to be honest, you're doing the right thing. Not being on Twitter, it is a cesspit. Like, it's just
yeah. Yeah, I've managed to dodge that in my life. I know it can be very anxiety producing, etc. From what my friends tell me. So I'm like, I'm just gonna stay away from that world.
Yeah, good work. Good work. Thank you so much, Dr. J Mack.
All right, brother. All right, thank you.
Take care. Bye,
Later, brother.
Bye.